They requested reinforcements, but what arrived were Deathworlders. The emergency beacon screamed across the void, its desperate signal cutting through the cosmic background radiation like a knife through silk. Commander Zeth Kara of the Galactic Defense Coalition felt her 4 hearts sink as she read the transmission from Outpost Meridian 7. The message was simple, terrible, and immediate. Under siege by Vorthak raiders, massive fleet. Request immediate reinforcements. Cannot hold position much longer. Meridian 7 was one of the most strategically important installations in the Outer Rim. It protected 3 major shipping lanes and housed nearly 50,000 civilians from 12 different species. If it fell, the entire sector would be open to Vorthak expansion, and millions more would suffer under their brutal occupation. Zeth Kara's scaled fingers danced across her command console, pulling up fleet positions throughout the sector. Her heart sank further with each display. Every available ship was either too far away, already engaged in combat, or undergoing critical repairs. The nearest Coalition fleet was 8 standard days away, far too long for Meridian 7 to survive. "Ma'am," her communications officer, a young Zalani with bright purple skin, turned toward her with worry etched across his features. "We're receiving additional transmissions from Meridian 7. Their shields are down to 40%. The Vorthak have deployed siege platforms." Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. Siege platforms were massive weapons designed specifically to crack defensive installations. Once they were in position, even the strongest fortress would fall within hours. "What about the emergency protocols?" Zeth Kara asked, though she already knew the answer. "Any reserve forces we can deploy?" Her tactical officer, a 6-armed Hectory, manipulated multiple displays simultaneously. "Negative, Commander. All reserve fleets are committed. The Andromedans are pushing hard on the Kepler front, and we've got 3 other critical situations developing simultaneously." Zeth Kara closed her eyes and felt the weight of command crushing down on her shoulders. 50,000 lives, and she was powerless to save them. The Coalition had spread itself too thin, fighting too many wars on too many fronts. This was the inevitable result. "Ma'am," the communications officer's voice cracked slightly, "there is one option, but it's highly irregular." "At this point, I'll consider anything," Zeth Kara replied, opening her eyes to focus on him. "There's a survey ship in the region, the UES Horizon. They responded to our general distress call and are offering assistance." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about Earth and its inhabitants. The humans had only joined the Galactic Coalition 18 standard months ago after a chance encounter with a Coalition exploration vessel. Their planet was classified as a Class 12 death world, one of the most hostile environments ever catalogued where sapient life had somehow managed to evolve. Most Coalition species came from garden worlds with stable climates, abundant resources, and minimal threats. The idea that intelligent life could arise on a planet where literally everything seemed designed to kill you was almost incomprehensible to them. "What kind of ship is the Horizon?" Zeth Kara asked carefully. "It's listed as a long-range exploration vessel, crew of 120, but..." The communications officer hesitated. "But what?" "According to their specs, it's armed. Heavily armed. More weapons than most of our dedicated warships." This wasn't entirely surprising. Coalition intelligence had noted that human ships seemed to carry an unusual amount of defensive capabilities for what they claimed were civilian vessels. When questioned, the human ambassador had simply smiled and said, "Where we come from, you never know what you might run into." "What's their estimated time to Meridian 7? Zeth Kara asked. Her tactical officer worked quickly. 6 hours, ma'am. They're already adjusting course." 6 hours. It would have to be enough. Zeth Kara knew she was probably sending these humans to their deaths, but what choice did she have? At worst, they might serve as a distraction, buying precious time for the real reinforcements to arrive. Open a channel to the UES horizon, she commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human vessel. Zeth Kara was struck immediately by how different it looked from Coalition ships. Where their bridges were designed with comfort in mind, soft lighting, ergonomic stations, and calming colors, the human bridge was stark and utilitarian. Everything was built for efficiency and durability rather than comfort. The human captain appeared on screen. He was a middle-aged male with graying hair and scars along his jawline that spoke of past violence. His eyes were a cold blue that seemed to take in everything at once. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Horizon," he said, and Zeth Kara realized her mistake. The human was female, though their species' dimorphism was often difficult for other races to detect. "We received your distress signal. What's the situation?" Zeth Kara quickly briefed Captain Chen on the dire circumstances at Meridian 7. She explained the overwhelming Vorthak force, the siege platforms, and the fact that no other help would arrive in time. Captain Chen listened without interruption, her expression growing harder with each detail. When Zeth Kara finished, there was a long pause. 50,000 civilians, Chen said finally. Mixed species? Yes. Families, children, elderly. The Vorthak don't distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. Another pause. Zeth Kara could see other humans moving around the bridge behind Captain Chen, their movements quick and purposeful. She heard someone in the background say something about battle stations and loading the big guns. "Captain Chen," Zeth Kara said carefully, "I must be honest with you. This is a suicide mission. The Vorthak fleet outnumbers you by at least 50 to 1. I'm not asking you to win, just to buy time." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "Commander, you said this station protects shipping lanes?" "Yes, 3 major routes. Millions of tons of cargo pass through each week, including medical supplies to the outer colonies. And if it falls, the Vorthak gain access to those routes?" "Correct. It would be a strategic disaster." Captain Chen nodded slowly. "Then we'd better make sure it doesn't fall." The transmission ended, leaving Zeth Kara staring at a blank screen. She wasn't sure if she admired the human's courage or was horrified by her apparent death wish. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Horizon, Captain Chen turned to her crew. Her bridge had transformed in the brief conversation. What had been a relaxed exploration vessel was now clearly a warship preparing for battle. Weapon stations were manned, damage control teams were standing by, and the familiar pre-combat tension filled the air. "Status report," Chen commanded. "All weapon systems online," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. "Mass drivers loaded with tungsten penetrators, missile tubes loaded with nuclear-tipped Hellfire packages. Point defense systems active. Engineering? Fusion reactors at maximum output," came the reply from Chief Engineer Thompson. "All systems green. We're running hot but stable. Sensors? Long-range scanners show massive Vorthak fleet. Preliminary count shows 47 heavy cruisers, over 100 escorts, and 12 siege platforms. They've got Meridian 7 completely surrounded." Chen absorbed this information without flinching. Those were terrible odds by any reasonable standard. Any sane military commander would retreat and wait for backup. But Captain Sarah Chen hadn't gotten her scars by being sane or reasonable. "How long until we reach engagement range?" she asked. 5 hours, 37 minutes at current speed. Take us to battle speed. I want to be there in 4 hours. "Ma'am." "That will push our engines past recommended limits." Chen's smile was sharp and predatory. "Chief, we're about to fight 50 to 1 odds to save 50,000 civilians. I think we can risk some engine strain." As the horizon accelerated toward its destination, Chen studied the tactical displays showing the Vorthak fleet. They were arranged in a classic siege formation, siege platforms positioned to bombard the station, while the fleet formed protective layers around them. It was a good formation against conventional tactics. The Vorthak were experienced raiders who had perfected their approach over decades of successful campaigns. They would systematically reduce the station's defenses until they could board and loot at will. But the Vorthak had never faced humans before. "Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez," Chen said, "start running attack patterns. I want multiple scenarios prepared." "What's our primary objective, ma'am? Disruption or destruction?" Chen looked at the display showing 50,000 innocent lives hanging in the balance, then at the overwhelming enemy force that stood between her ship and those lives. "Both," she said simply. The crew of the Horizon went about their preparations with the quiet efficiency of professionals. They had served together for 3 years, exploring the dangerous edges of human space, where pirates, hostile aliens, and worse things lurked in the dark between stars. They had learned that in a universe that seemed determined to kill humans at every opportunity, the best defense was an overwhelming offense. When threatened, you didn't try to survive. You made sure the other guy didn't. As they raced toward Meridian 7, Captain Chen thought about the Coalition's reaction to humanity's ships and weapons. The other species seemed shocked that exploration vessels carried enough firepower to level a city. They couldn't understand why humans would arm their civilian ships so heavily. But humans understood something that most other species didn't. The universe was a hostile place, and mercy was a luxury you could only afford from a position of strength. The Vorthak were about to learn this lesson firsthand. They requested reinforcements. Part 2. The UES Horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Meridian 7 system, like a ghost materializing from the void. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with the cold calculation of a predator sizing up its prey. The sight before them was worse than the reports had indicated. The Vorthak fleet stretched across space in a massive siege formation that spoke of overwhelming confidence. 12 siege platforms, each the size of a small moon, hung in perfect geometric arrangement around Meridian 7. Their massive guns were already firing, sending streams of plasma that lit up the station's shields like a deadly light show. "Sensor sweep complete," reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. "Confirmed. 47 heavy cruisers, 134 escort vessels, 12 siege platforms. The station's shields are down to 18% and falling." Captain Chen nodded, her expression unchanged. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. 3 years of exploring the edges of human space had taught them that panic was a luxury they couldn't afford. "Communications, any word from the station?" "They're trying to coordinate a fighting retreat, but they're completely surrounded. Civilian evacuation is impossible under this bombardment." Chen studied the enemy formation. The Vorthak had positioned themselves perfectly for a siege, but terribly for defending against an external attack. Their ships were focused inward, their attention completely devoted to reducing the station's defenses. "They're not even watching their perimeter," she observed. "When was the last time someone was stupid enough to attack them during a siege?" "Probably never, ma'am," Rodriguez replied. "Their intelligence network would have warned them about any approaching coalition fleets. But they don't know about us." Chen walked to the tactical station and began inputting commands. The display shifted to show attack vectors and weapon ranges. The Vorthak fleet was massive, but it was also spread out to maintain the siege formation. "Here's what we're going to do," she announced. "We're going to hit them where they least expect it, right in their soft underbelly." The bridge crew leaned in to study her plan. What Chen was proposing was either brilliant or insane, and most of them suspected it was both. "We'll approach from directly below their formation plane. Their ships are all oriented toward the station, which means their main weapons are pointing the wrong way. We hit the siege platforms first, take out their primary threat to the station." "Ma'am," her weapons officer interjected, "those platforms are heavily shielded. It would take sustained bombardment to penetrate their defenses. Not if we use the right ammunition, Chen replied with a predatory smile. Load the mass drivers with penetrator rounds, full nuclear load on the missile tubes, and prepare the special package. The weapons officer's eyes widened. Ma'am, the special package is supposed to be used only in extreme emergencies. I'd say 50,000 civilians facing extinction qualifies. Chen turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Meridian 7. Tell them to prepare for a tactical nuclear bombardment in their vicinity. They need to reinforce their radiation shielding immediately. Ma'am, won't that warn the Vorthak that we're here? Not if we send it on a tight beam directly to the station. Besides, in about 30 minutes, subtle won't matter anymore. The horizon began its approach, running silent and dark. Human stealth technology had been developed during centuries of naval warfare on Earth, refined through conflicts where detection meant death. The ship's hull absorbed electromagnetic radiation, while specialized baffles muffled its engine signature. To the Vorthak sensors, focused as they were on the bombardment, the approaching ship was nothing more than another piece of space debris. Captain Chen watched the range counter tick down. The closest siege platform was now only 50,000 kilometers away, point-blank range for the Horizon's weapon systems. All stations report ready, Rodriguez announced. Target the nearest siege platform. Full spread, maximum penetration. Targets locked. Fire. The Horizon's mass drivers spoke first, launching tungsten penetrators at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the distance in seconds, striking the siege platform's shields with the force of small nuclear weapons. But these weren't ordinary penetrators. Human weapons designers had learned from centuries of armor versus projectile warfare. The tungsten rounds were equipped with plasma charges designed to burn through shields and create temporary weak points. The first volley punched through the platform's shields like needles through cloth. The second volley, launched microseconds later, exploited those weak points to strike the platform's hull directly. What happened next demonstrated why humans were considered to come from a death world. The penetrators didn't just punch holes in the siege platform, they continued through its entire structure, their kinetic energy converting to heat and creating devastating secondary explosions. Within seconds, the massive weapon that had been threatening Meridian 7 was transformed into an expanding cloud of superheated debris. Target destroyed, Rodriguez reported with professional calm, as if destroying something the size of a moon was routine. Next target, Chen ordered. The second siege platform died as quickly as the first, then the third. The Horizon moved like a shark through the Vorthak formation, its weapons reaching out to touch targets with mechanical precision. It wasn't until the fourth siege platform exploded that the Vorthak fleet began to respond. Ma'am, enemy fleet is reacting. They're breaking siege formation and moving to engage. Chen nodded. This was the critical moment. Destroying siege platforms was one thing. Facing the entire Vorthak fleet was another. All right, people. Now comes the hard part. Evasive maneuvers, pattern delta, launch the special package. The special package was something that existed in the gray area between human military technology and human civilian exploration equipment. Officially, it was a deep space mining charge, designed to break up asteroids for resource extraction. Unofficially, it was a weapon that most coalition species would have classified as a war crime. The device launched from the Horizon's cargo bay looked innocent enough, a simple cylinder about the size of a shuttle. But inside that cylinder was the product of centuries of human engineering focused on one simple goal: making very large explosions. The package detonated in the center of the Vorthak fleet with the force of a small star going supernova. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Ships that weren't vaporized instantly found themselves thrown through space like leaves in a hurricane. The electromagnetic pulse alone disabled dozens of vessels, leaving them floating helpless in the void. But the horizon wasn't finished. "Multiple contacts approaching fast," the sensor operator called out. "They're angry." "Let them come," Chen replied. "All weapons free. Show them what humans do to bullies." What followed was less a space battle than a demonstration of applied human violence. The Vorthak ships, designed for raiding and intimidating weaker opponents, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before, a species that had evolved in constant warfare. The horizon danced through the enemy formation like a deadly ballet. Its point defense systems created walls of destruction that no incoming fire could penetrate. Its main weapons reached out to touch targets with casual precision, each shot calculated for maximum destruction. Human military doctrine was simple. If something threatened you, you killed it as quickly and efficiently as possible. Mercy was for after the shooting stopped. Vorthak heavy cruisers, ships that had terrorized entire star systems, found themselves outgunned by what the humans casually referred to as an exploration vessel. Their weapons, designed to intimidate and subdue, proved pathetically inadequate against human military engineering. Captain Chen watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. The Vorthak fleet was breaking apart, individual ships trying to flee as they realized they were facing something far beyond their capability to handle. "Let them run," she ordered when her weapons officer requested permission to pursue. "We've made our point." The battle lasted exactly 27 minutes. When it was over, the space around Meridian 7 was littered with the debris of what had once been one of the most feared raider fleets in the sector. The siege platforms were gone. Most of the Vorthak fleet was destroyed or fleeing. The few remaining ships were desperately broadcasting surrender signals. "Meridian 7 is hailing us," the communications officer reported. Chen nodded. "Put them through." The main screen showed the station's command center. It was crowded with beings from a dozen different species, all staring at her with expressions that ranged from shock to awe to something that might have been terror. Captain Chen, the station commander, a tall Altarian with blue skin, spoke carefully. We're reading massive destruction in the Vorthak fleet. What exactly did you do?" Chen shrugged. "We removed the threat. Is your station secure?" "Secure? Captain, you just destroyed an entire fleet with a single ship. The Vorthak have been terrorizing this sector for decades, and you eliminated them in less than half an hour." "They were threatening civilians," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "That's unacceptable." There was a long pause. Chen could see various species on the station's bridge, conferring in hushed tones. Finally, the station commander spoke again. "Captain, with all due respect, what exactly are you people?" Chen considered the question. "How do you explain to someone from a garden world what it meant to evolve on a planet where everything was trying to kill you? How do you describe a species that had turned warfare into an art form simply to survive?" "We're from Earth," she said finally. "We don't like bullies." They requested reinforcements. Part 3. 3 days later, Commander Zethkara stood in the main conference room of Meridian 7, surrounded by representatives from 12 different species and feeling completely out of her depth. The aftermath of what the humans were calling a minor police action had sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Coalition. Captain Chen sat at the far end of the table, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just rewritten several chapters of military doctrine. Her ship, the Horizon, floated nearby, and even now Coalition engineers were trying to understand how something classified as an exploration vessel could carry enough firepower to level a continent. "The preliminary reports are still coming in," Zethkara began, consulting her data tablet. "The Vorthak fleet is confirmed destroyed. Casualty reports show 17 enemy vessels escaped, 47 were completely destroyed, and the remainder suffered critical damage. She paused, still struggling to believe the numbers. Total coalition casualties, 0. Meridian 7 suffered minor damage to outer hull plating, no civilian casualties. The room was silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. Representatives from species that had warred with the Vorthak for decades sat staring at the human captain who had accomplished in 30 minutes what their combined fleets had failed to do in years. "Captain Chen," spoke Ambassador Threldar, a distinguished Hectari whose species had lost 3 colonies to Vorthak raids, "our strategic analysis indicates that your vessel's firepower exceeded that of an entire coalition battle group. How is this possible for what your government classifies as a civilian exploration ship?" Chen looked genuinely puzzled by the question. "Ambassador, where we come from, the line between civilian and military isn't as clear as it seems to be out here. When you're exploring unknown space, you need to be prepared for anything." "But surely," interjected Dr. Vashadi, a Zalani scientist, "your weapon's loadout far exceeds any reasonable defensive requirement." "Does it?" Chen asked. 3 months ago, we encountered a rogue AI controlling a Dreadnought-class vessel. 2 months before that, we ran into a species that communicated primarily through nuclear bombardment. Last year, we discovered a planet where the wildlife included creatures that could survive in hard vacuum and considered starships to be food. She shrugged. "In our experience, there's no such thing as being overprepared." Commander Zethkara found herself trying to imagine a universe where such encounters were routine. Her own species came from a world where the most dangerous predator was roughly equivalent to a small Earth house cat. "Captain," she said carefully, "our xenobiologists have been studying the reports from your homeworld. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. Most of our species can't even survive in your atmosphere without significant life support." "That's probably why we're good at building life support systems," Chen replied with what Zethkara was beginning to recognize as characteristic human understatement. Ambassador Krelmoth, whose aquatic species required a specialized environment suit for this meeting, spoke up through his translator. "Captain Chen, we've been analyzing your combat tactics. Your approach to warfare seems fundamentally different from ours. You targeted civilian population centers on Vorthak vessels." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Chen's expression hardened, and for a moment, Zethkara caught a glimpse of something dangerous beneath the human's calm exterior. "Ambassador," Chen said, her voice carefully controlled, "the Vorthak were conducting a siege against 50,000 civilians. They had demonstrated their willingness to target non-combatants. Under human military doctrine, they forfeited any claim to protection. But surely there are rules of engagement." "There are," Chen interrupted. "Rule 1, protect civilians. Rule 2, eliminate threats to civilians. Rule 3, if Rules 1 and 2 conflict with anything else, ignore everything else." The silence that followed was profound. Most coalition species had elaborate codes of conduct governing warfare, complex rules about proportionate response and acceptable targets. The idea of such simple, brutal clarity was both alien and somehow terrifying. Dr. Vashadi leaned forward. "Captain, our psychological profiles suggest that most humans exhibit what we would classify as controlled aggression tendencies. Is this accurate?" Chen considered this. "Doctor, humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've gotten very good at it because we've had to be. But we also know the cost of war better than most species. That's why we try to end conflicts as quickly and decisively as possible." "By overwhelming force," Ambassador Threldar observed. "By overwhelming force," Chen confirmed. "Better to end a war in one day than let it drag on for years." Commander Zethkara looked around the table at her colleagues. She could see the same thought in all their eyes. They had welcomed humans into the coalition without truly understanding what they were inviting in. "Captain Chen," she said, There's been some discussion among coalition leadership about expanding humanity's role in our defense forces. Chen's expression became unreadable. What kind of expansion? The kind where we officially recognize that Earth produces the most effective warriors in known space, Zethkara replied honestly. The Andromedans have been pushing hard on 6 fronts. The Devourers are stirring again in the Magellanic Clouds. And now we've learned that what we considered an unbeatable Vorthak fleet was just a minor inconvenience to a single human exploration ship. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We need your help. Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. Commander, you need to understand something about humans. We don't like being told what to do, but we really don't like bullies. And from what I've seen in your reports, the galaxy seems to have a lot of bullies. That's an accurate assessment, Zethkara admitted. Then you'll have our help, Chen said. But you need to understand how we operate. We don't fight wars to win battles. We fight wars to end them. Permanently. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a physical presence. Ambassador Krellmoth spoke first. Captain, what exactly does permanently mean to humans? Chen's smile was sharp enough to cut metal. It means when we're done, your enemies won't be a problem anymore. Ever. Dr. Vashati made a note on her tablet. Captain, our behavioral psychologist would like to study human military doctrine in more detail. Some of your tactical decisions seem to conflict with our understanding of rational warfare. Doctor, humans learned a long time ago that rational warfare is an oxymoron. War isn't rational. War is what happens when rationality breaks down. Our doctrine reflects that reality. Commander Zethkara found herself thinking about the implications of what she was witnessing. The coalition had survived for centuries through careful diplomacy, measured responses, and gradual escalation. The idea of simply overwhelming your enemies with such brutal efficiency was foreign to everything they had built their civilization on. But it worked. The Vorthak fleet that had terrorized the sector for decades was gone. 50,000 lives had been saved. The strategic situation had been resolved in less time than it normally took coalition committees to schedule a meeting. There is one more thing, she said. Our intelligence services want to know about Earth's military capabilities. If a civilian exploration ship carries this much firepower, what do your actual warships look like? Captain Chen exchanged a look with her first officer, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, who had been silent throughout the meeting. Commander, Rodriguez spoke for the first time. The Horizon isn't actually one of our more heavily armed exploration vessels. The room fell silent. Excuse me? Zethkara managed. The Horizon is a light exploration cruiser, Chen explained casually. She's built for speed and endurance, not heavy combat. Our ship's designed for serious exploration. The ones that go into really dangerous space carry significantly more firepower. And your actual military vessels? Ambassador Threldar asked weakly. Chen's smile could have frightened a black hole. Those are built for war. The meeting ended shortly after that, with various species representatives excusing themselves to contact their home governments. Commander Zethkara remained behind, staring out the viewport at the human ship that had changed everything. Commander, Captain Chen said, approaching her. You seem troubled. Captain, I'm wondering if we just solved all our military problems or created a much bigger one. Chen followed her gaze to the horizon. Commander, humans have a saying, walk softly and carry a big stick. We prefer peace, but we're very good at war. The choice of which you get is usually up to you. Zethkara nodded slowly. I hope our enemies understand that. They will, Chen replied. We're very good at teaching that particular lesson. As Captain Chen returned to her ship, Commander Zethkara reflected on what had just transpired. The coalition had requested reinforcements to save a single station. What had arrived were Deathworlders. The galaxy would never be the same. 3 hours later, as the Horizon prepared to depart Meridian 7, Captain Chen stood on her bridge reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The destruction of the Vorthak fleet was already having ripple effects throughout the sector. Other raider groups were pulling back from Coalition space. Pirates were avoiding shipping lanes. Even the Andromedans had apparently paused their offensive to reassess the strategic situation. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said, "we're receiving priority messages from Earth Command. They want a full report on our engagement." "Tell them we'll file a standard patrol report," Chen replied. "One minor police action, minimal ammunition expenditure, no casualties." "Ma'am, should I mention that we just eliminated the most feared raider fleet in the sector?" Chen considered this. "Add a note that we encountered some local pirates and dealt with them appropriately." As the Horizon jumped into hyperspace, heading back into the unknown regions of space where humans explored and anything could be waiting, Captain Chen allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was learning what humans had always known. Sometimes the best way to keep the peace was to be very, very good at war. Behind them, Meridian 7 continued its quiet orbit, protected once again. 50,000 civilians went about their daily lives, unaware that they had just witnessed the moment when humanity announced its presence to the galaxy as something far more than just another member species. They were the Deathworlders, and they had arrived. A